All right. Moving right along, I will call the Building and Zoning Committee for Monday, January 6, 2025 to order. It is 8:55 PM. We have a robust agenda this evening, so we'll get right to it. Item number 1, Zoning Hearing Board agenda for January 13th, 2025. We have one appeal, number 23-3778, Fox Lane Homes LLC for 1777 Willow Grove Avenue. I believe the applicant is here and is going to provide us a brief presentation. Please just introduce yourself and have at it.
Kelly McGowan. Hold it. Oh, okay. No problem. Kelly McGowan, I'm from the Obermeyer Law Firm, and I represent the applicant. So good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. John Rathon and Joe Morrissey are with me this evening, both representatives of Fox Lane, here to answer any questions that you might have about the application. So we're here before the commissioners, and I understand this project has not come before the public before, so this is your first time with having the opportunity for us to present this to you. So that's what we'd like to do. With that said, you're almost in a limited context tonight, which is the context of the Zoning Hearing Board application. That Zoning Hearing Board application requests certain relief in order to permit a townhouse development on a property that I know the township is very familiar with at 1777 Willow Grove Avenue. While John's getting set up, just by way of some brief introduction for you, because there is a significant history to this property. In 2008, a sketch plan was submitted for what was then permitted in prior zoning on this property as an age-qualified apartment complex. That consisted of 8 buildings. They were 4-story buildings over podium parking. That plan went through several iterations. That plan was actually a part of a larger plan that included the property that you're familiar with in Springfield Township. So fast forward through various iterations, the developer finally moved forward with a zoning hearing board application on the apartment plan in 2015. That application was opposed. It was actually a special exception that was granted that permitted that apartment use. Went up through the court system in 2019. Actually, as you all know, very rarely do land use cases get to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. This one did. The court in that case approved, or I should say affirmed the zoning hearing board's decision and issued a decision in 2019 confirming the vesting of that 2008 plan. So that was as of 2019. That's where this property stood. It's an odd-shaped property. It's a triangle. I know you're familiar with it, right on the municipal boundary line. So it starts out with constraints to begin with, just by virtue of its significant frontage, the shape of the property, and as you might hear tonight, the topography of the property. There's actually a significant increase in topography as you go up towards the Springfield line. So in 2022, I was originally retained by a related development company, Metropolitan Development Group. They are an apartment developer. Came to me. I started to have conversations with the township about an apartment plan. And it was a discussion of, we understand there's a 216 unit plan vested. We understand there are things about that plan that the township doesn't like. What can we do? So we started having discussions. We actually went so far as to make an informal submission to the township of a 160 unit plan. We brought the number of buildings down to 5. I think we made some improvements. But really the narrative in 2022 and 2023 around that plan was, Kelly, can't you do something different? Isn't there something else that can be done with the property? We'd really like to see a different unit type. We'd really like to see lower density. What can you do? So at that point, we dropped discussions. Joe Morrissey, president of Fox Lane Homes, related company, started looking at the property. So we come in 2024 with just that, the alternative plan. And that is the plan that is before you this evening and that is the subject of the zoning hearing board application. It is a 43 unit, what we call carriage home proposal. The development was structured or was designed to be in conformance to the greatest extent possible with your R3 zoning district regulations. This property is in your R1 zoning district. What that does is it gives the municipality a development that already is consistent in character with your zoning regulations, with your zoning scheme. But again, R1 regulations are different. R1 is a different single-family dwellings only, a different zoning scheme. So we started to have that discussion, and what we did was two things. Number one, brought this plan in as close to R3 as we could, and brought this plan in as close to the dimensional criteria as the vested apartment plan as possible. So what you'll see is while we are requesting variances from lot coverage and impervious surface, that lot coverage and impervious surface is consistent with the plan that was already the subject and was already approved in 2015 through that special exception process. So we think we've worked within the boundaries, within the constraints of this property in order to give the township really what we have come to, and if, John, we can get that on the screen.
Share.
Okay. What we think is the plan for the property. Hopefully we'll have that in a second. Just to tick through, again, you're here to consider our zoning hearing board application this evening, those variances. The first, as I've already implied, is a use variance. This G7 use, the townhouses, are not permitted in the R1 zoning district. They are permitted in the R3 zoning district. We actually did a survey of the township to see where townhouses are permitted. Your zoning map is a bit pocketed, I'll say, over the span of years with rezonings and different developments. You don't have a lot of townhouse development within the township, and you don't have a lot of R3 areas for townhouse development in the township. So we noted that. The other two dimensional zoning variances that are required that I've already mentioned are lot coverage and impervious coverage. Again, we're coming in within the bounds of what R3 would permit. So for example, for building coverage, the R3 district regulations are 30%. The number is 15% in the R1 district. We're looking for 20%. 20% is consistent again with that 2008-2015 plan. Impervious coverage is similar. R1, where this property is located, is 35%. R3, where the townhouses are permitted, is 50%. We're coming in at 45%. Again, that 45% is consistent, just a tick under where that apartment plan came in on impervious coverage as well. We're in conformance with the open space requirements. We're in conformance with the yard requirements, which we actually took a lot of steps to make sure, to ensure that that was going to be the case. For example, there's actually an interesting aggregate requirement in R1. While you have a 40-foot aggregate side yard requirement, one side yard can be as narrow as 15 feet. What we're showing here is a 40-foot side yard. This property has one side yard. So really an aggregate requirement doesn't apply to this property. So we made sure we were in conformance with that side yard requirement with the one side yard that we're showing, and that's to the left-hand side of the plan, now that you can see. The balance of the zoning relief is really related to the G7 itself, to the dwelling itself. You have a requirement that the end units of these townhouses be served with garages on the side. Again, given the triangular shape of this plan, the layout was constrained. The other thing that side yard, or I should say side building garages do, is they add impervious, and they cut into open space. So we've designed these, and John, I think if you could show a product view at this point while we talk about this, to give the commissioners an idea. This is an actual photo of development in Bluebell that Fox Lane has just completed. We would love for the commissioners to take a look at that development. It is the product type that's proposed for this development. You can see each unit is served with a 2-car garage, and that's a front-loading garage. Under your code, that is a variance. The other thing that we have also requested, again, is to permit the parking, those garages, to be in the front. Your G7 use also has a requirement that they be in the rear. Again, that would be like an alley style. What that does, in addition to having the constraints, again, of the shape of the property, it cuts into open space and adds impervious surface. So we've avoided that. The other dimensional relief that you'll see is from building separation. Again, you have a 60-foot building separation. We're looking for a variance to permit 30 feet, which again would be consistent with that 15-foot side yard requirement, and again is consistent with what we see in the R3 zoning district. And finally, the front yard of these units individually fronts on what will be a private street. There is a 50-foot front yard requirement. While we are maintaining that 50-foot front yard requirement, and actually in excess of that along Willow Grove Avenue, in the event the zoning hearing board determines that these units do have a front yard by virtue of them fronting on a public street, we have requested that variance out of an abundance of caution. That is a 20-foot front yard that we're showing from that right-of-way. And again, the 20 feet allows ample room in those driveways for parking, while also maintaining an appropriate distance so you're not, again, adding that impervious surface with excess driveway that isn't otherwise required for the development. So that is what we're looking at in terms of the full scope of our zoning relief. We have, again, had significant conversations both about this plan and the apartment plan. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have about Fox Lane Homes or about the development. We understand that some residents are in the audience tonight. We have held multiple neighbor meetings. We have held neighbor meetings both with the Lavrock neighbors to this development. We've also held a meeting with the recently developed Falcon Hill residents in Springfield Township. So we were able to share the plans with those new residents as well as Springfield Township and answer any questions that they have, as, you know, again, this will be proximate to their homes as well. So with that said, I would ask if you have any questions, and happy to give you any more information you need.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan.
You're welcome.
I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments from the board. Then we'll open it up for some public comment. But is there anyone on the board who wants to ask a question? I see Commissioner Brockington has a question.
Hi, thank you. Your street there, who's going to be responsible? Will this be your street or will this be a township street?
Sorry. At this time, we're proposing it as a private road. This development would have an association. That association would manage both the road, the stormwater management improvements, enter an O&M agreement with the township for both of those improvements, and the balance of the common area, including that open space that I referenced.
All right, thank you.
You're
That's all I
welcome.
had.
Thank you, Commissioner Brockington. Other questions? No. Commissioner Rappaport.
Just a couple. Are you planning basements for these?
So yes, they are basements.
Because there was something in the document about that, and then it sounded unresolved. So, okay. And yeah, the dimensional variances. So you're trying to fit them into the R3 and the previous settlement. You're trying to fit those dimensional variances into those parameters. Is that what I got?
Yeah, we're trying to fit within the parameters of your current zoning scheme for townhouses and within the parameters of the dimensions of the plan that is already vested with the township as well. So we're trying to do both of those things.
And in terms of permeable, because there was one dimension, I think it went from, it was supposed to be 60 and you went down to, I think 30. So that was a sizable.
Right. So Commissioner, that's actually a very good point. In addition to that, the use changing with the apartment use, the township, this property was previously zoned in a completely different zoning classification back at that time in 2008, 2015. That zoning ordinance provided far more, I'll call liberal standards applicable to the property that have since been rescinded or have since been rezoned now down to R1. So there's more strict zoning regulations applicable than were applicable to that vested plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Commissioner Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize timing and market conditions will be significant factors, but do you have an estimate sales price for these properties?
Sir, I'm sorry, just make sure you're keeping your finger on there and the lights on so that everyone can hear you who's on Zoom.
Oh, much better. I apologize. Sorry about that. Good. So with that, when we kind of look at these different neighborhoods, we obviously try to meet with the township first and get a feel of what the township's looking for. Ideally, why we really like this location and why we really like this location for what we call kind of a move down buyer was a couple of things. It's, you know, it's less traffic, it's less school age kids. It still generates a really good tax base for the township and the school district and some of the other things that go with it. But on top of that, just the location of this neighborhood off of Willow Grove, 309, proximity to Philadelphia, proximity to Chestnut Hill, proximity to Plymouth Meeting Mall, King of Prussia. It's just a really good location. The Ironstone neighborhood, we opened up that model in August of 2023. There were 58 units in that neighborhood, and we were sold out in August of 2024. So just under 60 homes in about 12 months, which, you know, in any markets is a good pace. So that was kind of the thought and why we looked at it. And obviously with all the other things based on Cheltenham and the township and the location is why we looked at trying to do the kind of the move down buyer. This neighborhood is market rate. Out of the 58 buyers, 55 of them are 55 and above. And part of that is just the price point that it is. It's footprint ownership. So there's no swing sets, there's no sheds, there's no lacrosse nets. You only own the footprint of the property itself. So it kind of limits itself between price point and the product, that it just limits itself to what we would call more of a move down buyer. At Ironstone, I would say 90% of the buyers came from about 3 to 4 miles of the site. So they were selling their single family home in close proximity, want to stay close to the kids or the grandkids, but just want a kind of a less maintenance lifestyle. when we build these homes, we make pretty much everything you can control on your phone, from your doorbell to your garage door opener to your, HVAC unit to your lights. So the thought process is, if you were somewhere else, whether it's Florida, down at the beach for the weekend, and someone came and they need to drop something off, you could literally, through your phone, literally open up the garage door, watch the guy come in through or woman come in through to drop off the package, watch them walk back out, and then close the garage door down. So it's kind of a lock it and leave it lifestyle.
Sir, I think the audio went out when you talked about the price point. So just really quick, could you just recap the price point part of your what you just said?
Yes. So we would expect the price point in this neighborhood to start in the high sevens, probably finish up with options in the high eights, and probably dip a little bit into the low nines.
Thank you very much.
This may be.
That's okay. Before you go, Commissioner Norris, did you have anything additional?
No, thank you. That
Okay.
was very helpful.
Commissioner Cherico, sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were pointing to me first. I believe when you completed the development in Springfield Township, there may have been some space or allotted for trails, correct? And I understand Gresham Trail is kind of leaping up towards Springfield Township. This might be preliminary, but have you made any plans for any sort of trails to connect this property to that property?
So at this point, this was just kind of a preliminary. The really nice thing with the Falcon Hill neighborhood, which we did build those 32 homes just north of this site, is the trail literally, goes around the entire neighborhood and then actually ties into LaSalle and with what, everything LaSalle has going there. So it wouldn't be very difficult to be able to connect this location into that kind of top left where you kind of see the cul-de-sac. We call it Lot 1. It wouldn't be very difficult because the trail runs right, along there. I'm not sure. I know at some point Montgomery County takes that trail over. At this point, I'm pretty sure the Falcon Hill HOA is responsible for it. So we would just have to figure out how we would need and what approvals we'd need to be able to tie into that. But it would be a kind of a nice connectivity because it literally would take you, obviously from here and then literally all the way up to LaSalle.
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Zieggenfeld.
Since you've been explicit a little bit on the numbers, have you developed a fiscal impact study that you could share with the township?
We have not done the fiscal impact yet. The thought process was just get some input and some feedback from the board, and then that would obviously be our next step.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. The price. That's why I asked to repeat the price point. Okay. There's a question in the chat about sidewalks on Willow Grove Avenue. Is that part of? I know that's probably part of the land development, and I'm going to touch on that in a second. But has there been any discussion about adding sidewalks along the frontage?
Now, one of the, and I think the neighbors will kind of say the same thing with Willow Grove. We're expecting with PennDOT, there's going to be some improvements to Willow Grove Avenue across there. Obviously, whatever, comes about with PennDOT or whatever we need to do to make that work, it actually might be safer to have somebody walk from the entrance closest to 309 and walk through the neighborhood to get to the other side. Having said that, if, as we go through the development process, it makes more sense to kind of continue some kind of trail along Willow Grove, we're happy to have that conversation with the township.
That's appreciated. So I just have a couple comments and questions. So I look at this proposal in the context of what could have been, right? And what could have been is really, for me, a non-starter. So the iterations that you all have gone through to get to the point where you're at, I think are really appreciated and commendable. And I am inclined to support it. I know that there have been some discussions with neighbors and with the township, and many of those things deal with land development, things like buffers, things like sidewalks and trails and that sort of thing, and stormwater, all in really important issues. And I think we're really going to have to, over the course of time, sharpen our pencils to make sure we are addressing all those things that are really important, not only to the neighbors, but also to the township in general. One thing that you talked about a little bit was, I can't remember the phrase you used. Is it move out home or
Move down buyer,
say it again?
kind of a move down buyer, someone
Move
probably
down
selling
buyer.
a single family home and downsizing.
Downsizing.
That's
Thank
fair.
you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for dumbing it down for me, Commissioner Lewis. So when I think of downsizing, I think of individuals who are empty nesters, and commonly in the 55 and older sort of realm. Is there an appetite on the part of the developer to include an age restriction? I think that would, for me anyway, address density concerns. When I say density, I don't mean numbers. I think about impact, right? So the impact to the school district, the traffic, it's other services, et cetera. I think having an age restriction is a beneficial aspect that lessens the density, lessens the impact, but allows the developer to have a successful property and parcel. Is that something that you have an appetite for?
No, that's a very good point, and I think some of the neighbors had kind of said something similar when we did the Ironstone neighborhood. Even though it was market rate, 55 of the 58 buyers were the move down buyers. 2 were families without kids, but under 55, and then 1 had some small children. So the product and the price point almost makes it a move down buyer. Having said that, for the peace of mind for the township, peace of mind for the neighbors, if you felt better saying it's age restricted, I know the buyers here with the product we're going to build are going to be move down buyers. And so having an age restricted requirement to it would be fine with us.
And when we say age restricted, that's 55 and older?
55 and above.
Okay. That does make me feel better. So I appreciate that commitment. And again, I look at this in the context of what the potential alternative is. And I think that because of the work that's been done by the developer here, and the commitment that you've given now, as well as the commitment to deal with the saldo issues, I am supportive of this plan. So seeing that there are no other, I'm gonna open this up for, thank you for your presentations. I'm gonna open this up. Ms. McGowan, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to open it up for some public comment. I know that we have some neighbors here in the hall. I see at least a couple people on Zoom. So we're going to start here in the hall. If you're interested in providing some comment, please come up to the podium. Make sure you put your finger on the button, state your name, the area of the township where you live, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide some public comment. Right where it says push.
Do I have to hold it down the whole time I speak? Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. My name is Wendy Blutstein. I live at 1805 Hillcrest Road in the Lavrock section of Glenside in Cheltenham Township. Almost 17 years ago, the Star Lloyd estate at 1777 Willow Grove Avenue was sold to Bud Hanson, a local developer. It was a stately mansion with historic gardens and bucolic grounds. When you drive down Willow Grove Avenue coming from Church Road, you see the historic and iconic red brick wall lining the property with a border of tall trees behind it, lining the property as an elegant entryway into our neighborhood. It's part of our neighborhood identity. As community members concerned about overdevelopment of the property, we have come to talk about the Fox Lane Homes proposed development. We support the proposal with some reasonable modifications, which we'll present tonight. Our concerns relate to the following issues: density, the buffer of tall trees along Willow Grove Avenue, preservation of the iconic wall if PennDOT allows, age restricting the property to 55 and up, which we've just discussed now, and the blind spot on Willow Grove Avenue, making ingress and egress there treacherous. I'm talking about the ingress and egress proposed to be at the, is it the eastern, the side closer to Church Road? Do you know what I mean? I guess if you look at the map there, it's on the right, yes, right there. That ingress and egress is right across almost directly from a house that has a driveway that goes onto the same spot. To the right of it, there is a rise. And so cars coming from Church Road up the rise and then down, you can't see them unless you see lights coming. So, and I've gone many times, I've made a left-hand turn out of the driveway on the right-hand side of Willow Grove Avenue, and I've made a left-hand turn from the estate's driveway, which means crossing traffic. And it's frightening. My heart does a little flip every time I make that turn because I can't see for sure what's coming. So I'm concerned that that very treacherous spot be looked at carefully and that it be considered to have one entrance into this development at the bottom part of it and none allowed there except for perhaps in emergencies, just the way they've done in the Springfield development where they have one ingress at, I believe, Ranch House Lane, and then they have an emergency exit a little further to the right there. I think they could do the same thing in Cheltenham that they've done in Springfield.
Ms. Blutstein, you're over 3 minutes.
Oh,
so-
I am? Oh, shoot.
Yeah, so if you want to just
I'll wrap it up.
tick off the things that you wanted to make sure that
Okay.
you said.
Over 17 years of negotiations over this property, we've heard promises come and go. We'd like this development to happen with modifications that are made conditions for any variances granted from current ordinances. We hope the Township Commissioners will join us in urging the Zoning Board to make any variance relief they grant conditional on modifications we and the Commissioners are seeking. Thank you for hearing our concerns, and thanks for the time and energy you put into making Cheltenham a better community.
Thank you. Anyone else in the hall? Just state your name, sir, and the area of the township where you live.
So I'm not very good at multitasking, so I have to actually read what I'm going to say, and I have to hold my finger down. I'm a guy. I'm limited. Let me be clear. Our group, Lavrock Neighborhood Group, is not against development.
Sir, your name?
Oh, Joel Pearlstein. I
Thank
live
you.
at 1778 East Willow Grove Avenue, so I live directly across the street from this development. And I've lived there for over 30 years. Okay, we're not against development. Let's be totally clear about it. I don't want anyone to characterize it otherwise. It's a very unique, as you know, it's a very unique 10-acre plot it's forested, and I think it's unique because you know that in Cheltenham, we don't have anything like that, or not many areas to develop like that. The property, also be clear, the property is currently zoned, you heard what we describe as the monster, so it's a 260-unit apartment, or R1. That's single-family homes with quarter-acre lots. There are no other houses in Lavrock that are carriage houses or townhouses. They're all single-family homes with quarter-acre lots. And yet Fox Lane is going to go and look for a variance, which is essentially a rezoning of the property. There have been backroom, indirect discussions between the developer and township solicitor, and our attorney. And we have, as a group, acquiesced to 40 units instead of 43, which will be presented to the zoning hearing board. But we're okay with the 40 units, as Kara challenges. We would hope that some of the 3 of the units that are going to lop off of the 43 can be reallocated on the development in a way to, away from New Bold, to benefit the New Bold residents, and then maybe also to enhance the chances that the wall will remain, the iconic historic wall will remain, and that the single point of access will be more accessible. The other point I want to discuss is the green buffer, 50-foot buffer off of Willow Grove Avenue. We're seeking a natural buffer so that we envision a natural green buffer with the one that leaves intact the hundreds of mature trees that are there. Unlike the Springfield development, which Fox Lane has developed, it's a pretty good development. It's a favorable development. We've all been there. What's not favorable about it is they cut down a lot of the mature trees that are there and they put up saplings. And that's not what we're looking for. In conclusion, we like a little bit lower density than they're requesting, and a significant green buffer seems to us to be a triple win. It's a win for the developer because they get to develop the site and do things, use it in ways that are not currently permitted. It benefits the neighbors because it enhances and preserves an area and the aesthetics that allowed us to move there. And third, it of course helps the township because because of the tax base and the revenue that will be generated.
Thank you, sir.
Is that good? I've got the button right?
You've got the
Okay.
button right, correct.
Bob Elfant, 7812 Froebel Road. And I too am not opposed to this development. Fox Lane comes to us with a pretty good reputation, and we feel positive about them, and we feel positive about the development. I just have 2 brief comments. Every time a discussion comes up about the development of this site, the neighbors are told, well, it's much better than the 260-unit monster. I've been in real estate for 50 years. The last 5 years have been the most robust development of multifamily housing in my 50-year career, in the city and outside the city. Yet not once have we heard about a proposal for somebody to build that. And I don't think, I would ask that the commissioners not make the decision on approval of this based on the fear of something that I don't think is out there and there's no market for, but rather a respectful analysis of the development that they're proposing. The second point I want to make is that each time we have mentioned a condition, everybody says from the development side and others, that's going to be on PennDOT. That's going to be up to PennDOT. We can't say anything about that. That's up to PennDOT. I don't really want to see the decisions made about the development of this lot with regard to the green buffer and the retention of this iconic wall made based on what PennDOT says. If in fact PennDOT says something has to be altered or changed, I think there should be enough good faith developed between us, the neighbors, and the developers to figure out what has to be done to resolve that. But I don't want to say, oh, we can't commit to saving the wall. We can't commit to the green buffer because we have to wait for PennDOT. I think it's appropriate for the commissioners to state conditions of this approval. And then if PennDOT creates a problem for it, We'll figure it out, because I'm telling you from the heart, we are not opposed to this development. Yes, we'd like a little bit less density. Yes, we'd like a green buffer. Yes, we'd like a retention of the wall. Yeah, and we'd like a signal entry point. We want it to be safe for everybody. But the bottom line is, we'd like the decision made based on those conditions made by us and by the commissioners, as opposed to relying on PennDOT. And if PennDOT comes back to us and says something has to change, I think we're all big boys and girls, and we can figure it out, because we're not opposed to the development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My
Please.
name is Todd Sagan. I'm a Lavrock resident for 40 years in the township. And I think I'm the last of the neighbors in the room, at least, to speak tonight. So I'll kind of summarize. As you heard, we're in support of this development with some reasonable modifications. We see a real opportunity here for the township. But we do think these modifications are valuable to the township and important. I'll speak to just a couple of them, because you've already really heard all of them at some point. One is this wall. You've heard a lot about this wall. One of the things that makes this township different than other townships throughout the area is that it's not a cookie-cutter township. We aren't ticky-tacky developments that all look the same. All of our neighborhoods in this township have their unique characteristics, and one of the things that makes Lavrock unique is this wall. You can tear it down and put up some kind of a privacy wall. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for a substitute. This brick wall is historic, and as you've heard it labeled numerous times, iconic, so we value it. We value the age restriction. We've heard reassurances and commitments that the age restriction 55 and older will be in place. I think you've also heard tonight the value of that restriction to the township. We are concerned that commitments not just be verbal commitments or vague commitments, but they're real commitments. And I'll talk about that in just a second. And the last point I just want to emphasize is we think there's an opportunity, and we've seen it in some of the communications with the developer, to make this a single access community with an emergency kind of safety valve. But as you've heard, we are concerned about entrance at the blind spot on Willow Grove Avenue. And if we can avoid that, it also helps preserve the wall, and it preserves a safe ingress and egress for this community. We are considering going next week to the zoning board, where variances will be requested, and asking that these modifications be made, be guaranteed contingent on these variances. So, because we've heard promises before, and we want to make sure that they are followed through on. We would ask the commissioners to join us in doing that. If these modifications, if you feel they're reasonable as we do, then it's reasonable to ask that they be made conditions to grant a variance from the ordinances that you've put in place. And we hope you'll support us in that way. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here in the hall wishing to make a comment on this agenda item? All right, so I'm going to close comment here in the hall and open it up on Zoom. I see Brad P. Stranger out there. You're first and you're muted.
Of course I was muted. I didn't want to disturb the meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Arman. As many of you know, I'm not unfamiliar with zoning issues. I'm only going to ask a question out of curiosity, because I did see a number of things I would ask questions about if I were in your seat. These are developed for 55 and older, and I'm assuming that as someone who is older than 55, I wouldn't be buying a house like that to live there for 5 years. So given that somewhere between 10 and 20 years is the amount of time they're going to be there, from the image they showed of their prior development, none of those houses are accessible. They all have stairs in the front. They're all 2 levels. Now, you can deal with the 2 levels with a stair lift, but you'll have to be able to get into your house. That was concerning. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Pransky. I stated your name for you. The next person with their hand up is Vi. Vi, please state your full name for the record.
Good evening. It's not Vi, it's VAY. It stands for Victor A. Young. I am a resident of Lavrock, the 7900 block of Newbold Lane. I'm a former committee person, and so I am accustomed to speaking out on behalf of the residents, certainly those on my block. I've heard what's been said, and I concur very much with what has been said, particularly Wendy. She and I go back a long way. My concern is, I guess, the question of the single entry that has been described. When I need to make a left-hand turn from where I live, at times of the day is nearly impossible because of the traffic. I'm sure everyone has driven on Willow Grove Avenue. You know how fast they come down. So that's one problem. But now to have more cars coming from the opposite side of Newbold Lane, and I've had to wait for folks and they don't know which way they want to turn. So I can't turn until I know what they're going to do. It's problematic. The developers who don't have to live here every day, they may not be as concerned as I am, but I am concerned for myself and for my fellow residents. So I have to question what is going to be happening with respect to the traffic on Willow Grove Avenue once these new buildings are built. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That is an excellent question, and as part of after the zoning, typically after the zoning process concludes and the land development process commences, traffic studies, and I assume on that road the board would want a traffic study to understand the impact of the development would take place at that time. So hopefully that answers your question, and your concern is certainly a valid one and shared.
I do recall the traffic studies being done when the Springfield area was being done. And so I would see every once in a while someone standing there with a clipboard in hand and checking how many cars go by, bing, bing, bing. That doesn't help me at all when at 7:30 I have to leave to catch my train. And cars are coming from opposite direction as well as Willow Grove Avenue. So I do hope that PennDOT takes a far more serious look at this when it happens.
Thank you, sir. I see Sonia Bryant Lockett has their hand up.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good evening. We can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Sonia Bryant Lockett. My husband and I live at 8001 Newbold Lane, Lavrock. And of course, we also too are concerned. We're part of the Lavrock Neighbors Group, so our colleagues have already spoken. But one thing that's a little bit different from the group is that my husband and I live directly across from the development site. And one of the things that I heard earlier, I believe her name is Miss McGowan, when she opened up, was that there were some conversations or meetings with the Springfield residents who also would be impacted by this development. And I guess my question is, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate forum, but I would be interested in knowing when those conversations took place and what those concerns are, because we have our own questions and concerns as well. And I'm not sure that we've had an opportunity to have a conversation with Fox Lane or with anyone else outside of our own community. Our own committee group. So I just wanted to just for the record, make it known that we are directly impacted. We're right across. I mean, on your diagram, we're directly across from housing units. I believe they're marked 41 and 42 or 40 and 41. And our names are on your diagram. So we are certainly significantly impacted by this development, whether it is a single road, double road. Just to the gentleman who just spoke, we're impacted already by the traffic on Newbold Lane, the volume of traffic that comes through Newbold Lane from the Springfield development just to get onto Willow Grove just for us to get out of our own driveway. So we also share in concerns as well. So I just wanted to, for the record, to know that if there were conversations being held, certainly if that information could be made available, because maybe those are concerns that we have as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to be clear, the conversations that occurred between the developer and the neighbors were not township discussions necessarily. They were between a neighbor group. But in fact, this is the first meeting to discuss this formally, which and then there'll be follow-up meetings at the zoning hearing board and then potentially at land development. What I would also recommend is that if you are interested in connecting with the neighbor group, you could probably find out who they are, or I'm sure Commissioner Lewis could help connect you. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have some comments at the
But
appropriate
let me
time.
just see if there's any other public comment before I turn it over to you, Commissioner Lewis. Yeah. Any other public comment on Zoom? You don't see? Okay. All right. We're going to close public comment, and Commissioner Lewis has some things to say.
Good evening, everyone. Commissioner Lewis, I am the commissioner for Ward 2, which is where this development is, where 1777 is. Let me first thank the Lavrock Hills folks that presented today, but the group as a whole. These are extraordinary residents, long-term residents, and I believe at this point they have gone beyond what's good for Lavrock Hills, but they also understand what's also good for Cheltenham Township. Not only am I the commissioner for Ward 2, I also live on Willow Grove Avenue. So I have a special interest in this project as well. Not that I wouldn't if I didn't live on Willow Grove Avenue.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID, followed by
But I've been privy, since I've been a commissioner, to a number of these situations where there's development in the township and there's a split between the people, the residents, and the township. What I heard tonight is music to my ears. That to a great degree, there's agreement. There's an agreement on the project itself. That's huge. I remember not too long ago on a project in this township, I think I got 65 or 70 letters in the mail from residents that was opposed to the project. That didn't happen here, and I applaud the Lavrock neighbors. But we are in agreement of the project as a whole, of the development. And the history of 1777, that has not been the case. There has not been agreement for development on that site. We have also agreed on age restriction. Also agreed on number of homes. Not sure where that actually sits right now, but my question, Mr. President, is in light of those things, those good things, how do we move forward with this project that the neighbors want, that I believe the township wants for many reasons? One particular question that I want to point to is, I'm not sure if Dr. Bluestein brought it up, but can we request this is my question to Mr. President and Board. Can we request that the additional conditions, the wall, single access, and other things be a condition when the neighbors go to the zoning hearing board next week? Can we make those conditions for the neighbors?
Thanks for your question, Commissioner Lewis. The short answer is because we seemingly don't have a full agreement on those, I think it's hard to make those conditions as part of our decision. But what I do think we should do is find the common ground that has been identified. That's the age restriction. And support this development with that condition that everybody's on the same page, and let the developer and the neighbors work over the course of the next week until the zoning hearing board on additional conditions that they could agree to. And if they don't reach an agreement, certainly all the other items that have been raised here are land development issues. And those issues, whether it's the buffer, the wall, the traffic, the stormwater, the ingress and egress, all of those things will be back before us. So it seems to me we have a backstop in the event that the parties don't come to an agreement on those conditions. So that would be my suggestion. And in fact, unless you have other comments, I would be willing to make a motion in that regard, and I'll sort of characterize it if that's all right.
I'm sorry. Let me hear the motion, please.
So I will move for to support the application with the condition that there is an age restriction of 55 and older for this property. And that is the motion, with the understanding that we expect the developer and the neighbors to continue to communicate and work out some of these other issues. And if they can't be worked out, the developer should anticipate that we will be dealing with those when they come before us in Seldo. So that's more than what the motion is. The motion is to support the application with the 55 and older restriction.
Can I make another comment before?
Of course.
So you made an interesting point about if the two parties can't agree that these issues, these land development issues will come back to the Board of Commissioners, which we will have the right to not vote on, to not support, if it's not in the best interest of the neighbors and the township as a whole. So this is not the last stop, Lavrock Hills neighbors. For the other issues that are land development related, hopefully we can get these resolved before next week. If we can't, they have to come back here and we have to vote on them. And again, I think we both have leverage in that the developers want to develop here and you want the development. So it's in everybody's best interest that we come to an amicable agreement on how we move forward in the best interest of the township and the Lavrock Hills neighbors.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Yep. Commissioner Cherico.
I'm not quite sure, and forgive me if I missed this, but could we get some sort of input from the developers on the issue of the wall, as well as a single entry, the concept, because I don't know that we've fully heard the opinion of the developers on this.
So a couple things, and I think you heard the statement here, and I think we're being very careful to do it. You heard the statement that prior developers, prior landowners have made promises that haven't come through. This developer does not do that. So we are not going to sit here and tell you that and tell the neighbors and represent that we're going to be able to do things in land development unless we are absolutely sure we're going to be able to do those things in land development. So that's my first answer, just to this development in general, specifically with respect to the wall. You heard us talk about the topography of the property already. You haven't heard us talk about the proximity of the wall to the cartway of Willow Grove Avenue. It's pretty darn close in a lot of locations. So it is our assumption at this point, and you've heard us talk about PennDOT a little bit, that PennDOT's going to require some road improvements to Willow Grove Avenue. We don't know what they are yet. We don't know what they're going to look like. We don't know what that looks like in terms of locationally. So at this time, given the location of the wall and given the uncertainty that we have about what improvements are going to be required, we can't go much further. You heard some of the neighbors talk, and we have been talking about what we could do in the alternative if a portion or all of the walls required to come down. We're still working through that. Joe was out driving 15 times up and down Willow Grove Avenue just this afternoon, taking some pictures. The other part of that is there is a very steep grade at Willow Grove Ave. So a lot of work is going to need to occur along the frontage. Again, we don't know what that looks like. So when we talk about making, promises to keep the wall or to keep vegetation and things like that, we don't have that information yet. Similar response with respect to the driveway. I think as working through land development, single access developments are not encouraged, right? For obvious reasons, basically dealing with life safety, right? You want two roads out, or two ways out. So necessarily we will develop that way every time. And I'm pretty sure, fairly certain without even confirming it, that if we tried to do one access, it wouldn't conform with your subdivision ordinance requirements for a cul-de-sac, for single access. So that's, again, and given the length of the frontage here, all of the things that we're dealing with the property, that's why you see what you do with the double access. With that said, that's also PennDOT regulated. PennDOT is going to regulate those two access points. PennDOT is going to have requirements for site distance. They're going to have requirements. And if it's not in a location that meets PennDOT requirements, it's going to have to move. A traffic study will be done. You heard that question. That will be a requirement. If the traffic study shows that there are any ingress egress issues with respect to turning movements, PennDOT's going to comment on that. So yes, all of these issues will be done. What we have been working to do, I think, with the neighbors and with the township at this point in the development is to go as far as we can on those issues with the information that we have. We appreciate the age qualification condition. That's directly related to the use. That is directly related to the request for relief from the zoning hearing board, and it's an absolutely appropriate condition. So that's kind of where we're at, if I answered your question adequately.
I appreciate that, and I understand there are limitations. PennDOT and other entities must weigh in, and so I appreciate the fact that we can't make promises that we may not be able to keep. I understand that. Will reiterate, I think what one of the residents said is that Cheltenham Township, as you know, and I'm not sure if you've developed here before, it's a unique place with a lot of character, and the wall there adds an element to the community that I think would be terribly sad to lose. I think, we see Stotesbury and those the entrance there, the way that was kept. It's an homage to what went before, and to be able to keep that wall, I think, would be an amazing acknowledgement to our history and to the culture. We aren't Bluebell. And no offense to people in Bluebell, but we don't want to be Bluebell, right? We want to be Cheltenham, and we want to keep that that character. And so, as much as we possibly can, I would say let us do everything we can. Obviously, in this case, that's going to be land development. It's going to be everything else that PennDOT has to do. But I would just encourage you with from my deepest of my soul to say, please, let's do what we can to keep that character, because I think it will also elevate your development as well, at least the feel of your community. So thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah,
I'm about to call the motion, but Commissioner Norris wants to, I understand. Yeah, we'll wait. We'll give Commissioner Lewis a minute to return to the dais. All right. So I'm sorry. Sure, Commissioner Lewis.
So I don't know if this is for Kelly or the board, but the motion, Matt, did not include the 40 homes. It just included age restriction. So where do we stand with that?
So Commissioner Lewis, I'll let Kelly come to the podium to address that. But my understanding is that when we had discussions earlier about reducing the number of units from 43 to 40, it was with an understanding that we also had an agreement on issues related to landscaping and the wall. And I'll let Kelly speak, but I think what you're going to hear is that the proposed conditions that we heard this evening are not viable options in land development. That's what she was speaking to a moment ago. They're not going to tell you they can do something here tonight that is impossible to do in land development.
So
If there's going to be changes to what was discussed previously about landscaping or the wall, I think that might impact the number of units that it's going to take to make this project a viable project.
So Ed, that's absolutely correct. But and how this works is twofold. Number one, the developer seeks to have a global resolution always, right? Of all issues, of everything that we can control when we're trying to work with the township and work with neighbors. So what we don't want to do is piecemeal conditions, taking the proverbial bites at the apple, right? And so you agree to one thing and then, well, there's this other thing that you haven't resolved yet. And then there's this other thing. And the density number is significant. That is a significant part of this development. What you can do in the development with 43 units is different than what you can do in the development with 40 units. Your ability to do things with landscaping is impacted obviously by the number of units. Your ability to do things along the Willow Grove Ave frontage and frontage improvements and features, entrance features, is directly impacted by the scope of your development. So yes, we have been trying to come up with a set of conditions. We thought we had, as of last Friday, we had some conditions on the table that didn't come to fruition this afternoon. So it, changed up a little bit. That's fine. We're still working through it, but that's exactly where we are. We're still working through it. It is our intent to continue working with the neighbors and the township on these other issues. But no, coming before you this evening, we did not get to a resolution on all of those issues. And I think you heard that tonight. So
I think, Ms. McGowan, to the developer, I think what you're hearing is we expect you all to work over the course of the next week to continue to work with the neighbors to address these issues. And we encourage resolution of these matters. Frankly, it would be great to have them resolved before you even get to land development, right? But if they're not, then certainly we will deal with it. And I think you're getting a sense from the board what we think is important as part of the land development. So to the extent you could work that out ahead of time, I think that would be advisable. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. I don't believe there's any other comment. So the motion again is to support the application with the condition, the 55 and older age restriction. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Oppose.
Okay. 6-1. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who participated in the discussion. Item number 2, receipt of the monthly Citizens Committee meeting minutes. We have the Planning Commission from December 16th, 2024. Any comments or questions on these minutes? All right. Seeing none, I'll move for acceptance of the Planning Commission meeting minutes from December 16th, 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 2B, Board of Historical and Architectural Review took place on December 19th, 2024. Any comments or questions on those minutes?
Don't you have a withdrawal on second?
Oh, I wasn't sure if, yeah, we're going to table. Okay. So, do we have to accept other minutes? They're minutes, right? Yeah. So I'll move to receive the minutes of the Bahar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And item 2B1 is approval or consideration of a certificate of appropriateness. It's my understanding, Mr. Diazio, that this item has been tabled at the request of the applicant. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I do see that Mr. Singh is on the line here, and I believe he is a representative of the owner. There was a late afternoon request for this matter to be tabled. That request came through council. Mr. Singh, if you're here and you'd like to confirm that you'd like the board to table this matter, otherwise we will simply act upon the communication I received from your counsel, and we'll do that. So you'll be back here at some point in the future on this issue. But if you're here, feel free to unmute yourself and just confirm that you understand that this matter is going to be tabled this evening. Okay, so with that, I think the board will not take any action on this matter with the understanding it will be back before the board at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Moving on then to item number 3, receipt of the planning and zoning monthly reports for December 2024. There's an attachment. Any comments or questions on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll move for receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 4, report of the building inspector for December 2024. Again, an attachment. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll move for acceptance of the report of the building inspector for December 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 5, report of the code administrator for December 2024. Comments or questions? Any color commentary, Mr. Lynch?
Color commentary.
Head shaking. All right. I'll move for acceptance of the report of the code administrator for December 2024.
Aye.
Aye.
To think about that one. Item number 6 is old business. There's no old business on the agenda, but if anyone has old business for building and zoning, be heard now. All right. Oops, someone's at the door. I will close old business and open new business. We have one item here. And before I read this off, this is something that our planning and zoning staff have been working on for some time now. These items are somewhat, they're minor, but they're significant changes that are going to help encourage commercial development in our commercial districts. And it is demonstrative of the work that staff does to go back and review our ordinances in the current context and the current time frame in order to determine the best way to help encourage development in our township. And I anticipate in 2025, we'll be seeing a lot of revisions and reviews of our ordinances to bring them up to date, to make them more impactful for our residents, for our businesses, and for our township. So without further ado, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners authorize advertisement of a public hearing to consider public comment on an ordinance amending Chapter 295, Section 295-405 regarding personal care business, accessory roof-mounted solar systems, Sections 901, 1001, 1101, 1201, 1301, 1401, 1501 regarding permitted uses, Section 295-2301 regarding general parking regulations by land use, and Section 295-2601 regarding yard regulations and front yard projections. There's an attachment that identifies all of these changes. Before I open it up for questions, Mr. Sekawungu, do you want to just give us a very brief overview of what we're trying to accomplish here? And then Commissioner Rappaport, I understand, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this proposal before you is to really make changes to the existing ordinance. We made some changes in March specific to reducing the distance, the separation distances for our personal care businesses. At this point, we're making a recommendation to eliminate them altogether. Again, we continue to create hardships for our businesses in the downtown, and one of which is a business that was recently before you on Southeastern Road. So the idea, again, is to eliminate these distance separations, and hopefully we'll be able to build up on what's existing. Again, encourage walkability. These distance separations deter, people that are trying to patronize them from walking because of the separation. But again, that's the concept here. The solar portion of it is really to encourage safety. That was a recommendation made by the building department. And then regarding the section on yard regulations and front yard projections, we're trying to eliminate dual driveways. Again, that's really for the purpose of reducing impervious coverage on lots, especially corner lots. That's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sekawungu. All good work. Commissioner Rappaport.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with what we're going for. I had a technical question about the solar panels, the roof mounted, and I understand that the wording was such that firefighters might need access. Okay, so that made sense. But I wasn't sure if the wording really said what it meant to say, because it sounded like in a twin that you could only have one side that had solar, denying the other twin solar. And it seemed to me what it really meant to say was that half of their property would be covered rather than half of the entire roof. I don't know. What I'm asking you tonight is to go back and look at that wording on page 2F, either II or 11, I don't know what it was. Look at the wording and see if it really says what we want it to say before we advertise it. Thank you.
Scott is also online. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that or not.
Yeah, and like I say, I get the intention and I agree. I just want to make sure we're not accidentally wording it in a way that denies the attached twin its own solar. Thank you.
That's fine. Mr. President, yes, I'll get with Henry. We'll reevaluate the wording on that. The intent is that, again, with a twin, as Commissioner Rappaport explained, only 50% of the roof can then be covered with solar panels. So if you have a twin, both twins can essentially have solar panels, but only 50% of the roof coverage can be covered with panels, if that makes sense.
So that was really the issue.
Okay.
Whether it really says it the way we intended it to be.
That's fine.
And Commissioner, when you look at the language, the applicant in this case would be the owner of one side of the twin, because they're two separate addresses, right? Two separate parcels, two separate addresses. I think we might try to clarify that, but I think the thought was it's not 50% of the total roof where one house can have solar and one can't. But we'll look at that. It's a good point.
No,
Thank
thank
you.
thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Good point. Commissioner Zieggenfeld has
Thank
a
you.
question.
Mr. Sagawango, when I looked at the front yard projections revision, I was wondering if there are any current proposals that would be subject to this revised ordinance.
I'm not aware of any at this moment in time. Again, the idea really is to reduce impervious coverage in our community, encouraging additional driveways when there's already an existing driveway just creates, it compounds the issue that we have currently. But I'm not aware of anything right now.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to authorize the advertisement of the public hearing to consider the amendments listed, which I will not read again. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all. Is there any other new business for building and zoning? All right. Yeah, Commissioner Charco.
Sure. I have been wanting to bring this up in a few meetings, but very quickly, is there a way that we could get an update from Elkins Estate as to the progress of their project? It's been a couple years since I think we've granted them the tax relief, the TIF, and I think understanding where they are in that development and what's happening there would be helpful. So perhaps at a future meeting, we could hear from them.
I can make that request to their council. I think they'd be glad to come before the board. For what it's worth, the school district recently asked for a similar presentation, and within the last 6 months, council was there giving an update. I think they would welcome the opportunity to come give this group the same.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Charco. Any other new business? All right. Seeing none, we'll close new business. We'll open it up for citizens forum. I don't see anyone here in the hall, but if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and feel free to do so. All right. Going once, twice. Citizens forum is closed, and I will now move for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank
Good
you,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Happy New Year.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.